The question I ask all of you right now is how many ounces of gold and how many ounces of silver do you have? I don't care about anything else. Just look at what they're doing today. Don't worry about tomorrow. Today, they're printing so much money because this mountain of debt is so high. If they stop printing money, it crashes.
Upon the breakout, gold's going to make a new all-time high.
Gold-backed ETFs seeing inflows of over $5 billion.
$0.8 trillion gold market.
Why are we the only guys that seem to understand this?
Makes your head spin. Welcome to Live from the Vault. As you can imagine, the Live from the Vault community keeps growing, and thank you very much from the entire Live from the Vault team worldwide. And we have a blockbuster episode for you today. We're going to be talking to the one and only Robert Kiyosaki, founder of the Rich Dad Company, a private financial education company that provides personal finance and business education to people through his many books and videos, including Rich Dad, Poor Dad, a must read for anyone who is serious about escaping the rat race. And so you're not going to want to miss any part of this episode. And on a personal note, I'm fired up. I'm excited today about this interview because we have two legends on the call, and both have had a massive impact on my own personal financial education. About 20 years ago, Robert, via his books and videos, taught me about the importance of physical gold and physical silver. And this is when I became positively addicted to accumulating physical assets. Thank you so much. And then years later, the one and only Andrew Maguire showed me where I could buy physical at wholesale or close to spot as possible. And so to both of you, I'll be forever grateful. And just before we get started with Talking Gold with Andrew Maguire and Robert Kiyosaki, please keep spreading the word about this channel by liking, sharing, smash that subscribe button, and then click the bell right there if you want to be notified as these episodes go live. So with that, let's head over to the UK and Talking Gold, the one and only Andrew Maguire, and in Arizona with Robert Kiyosaki. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you. Well, this is a privilege for me, Robert. It's awesome to be speaking to you. I've been looking forward to this for a very long time, and thank you so much for joining us today on Live from the Vault.
Well, thank you. I mean, I'm honored to be a part of your program.
Well, goodness me, Robert. I mean, Rich Dad, Poor Dad is pretty much, I mean, everybody. In fact, there isn't anyone I've spoken to who hasn't heard of it. Now, even if they haven't bought one of your books, I think that something like 32 million copies. I mean, goodness me, I suspect right now this book is selling as many copies as the Bible. Robert, I know you see gold and silver as money, and I would just love to ask you your views on several questions about the subject, really. But one, can we start by looking at the formation? If we go all the way back to where things went wrong, go back to the formation of the Federal Reserve. Obviously, and I've heard you talk about this before. 1913. Come on, tell us your thoughts on what actually happened in 1913.
Well, in 1913, the Fed is the third central bank America has had, because every president has warned against central banks, like the Bank of England. And the Fed is not federal, it has no reserves, and it's not a bank. It's a cartel of banks. And in 1913, the Fed, the third one, was created starting with President Washington, said, do not have a central bank. Since, 1776. Not only was the Fed created in 1913, so was the taxman. You know, the Beatles always saying about the taxman. Well, in 1913, the 16th Amendment was passed, which caused America to be taxed. And almost up to that point, till 1913, America was a tax-free nation. So what does that tell you? For money to exist, taxes had to exist. Hear me out. For money to exist, the dollar or the pound, taxes had to exist. So it was one of the biggest scams going. And that's why 1913 is so important. And then in 1944, as World War II was winding down, the world agreed to make the US dollar the reserve currency of the world, which it is today, if America promised to keep it backed by gold. So in 1944, the United States says, we promise we'll back it by gold. And then in 1971, President Nixon says, oops, we broke our promise. And that allowed money printing to go out of control. So here we are today. I have this. I just got this. This just came in. It's The Economist from London, and it says here. This is this month. It says governments have spent $17 trillion on the pandemic, including loans and guarantees, for a combined total of 16% of the global GDP. That's how much money was printed last year. 16% of the global GDP. Now, if that doesn't cause you to run out and buy gold and silver, I don't know what will. You know, they now have to keep printing or we crash. That's why I've been bullish on gold for all these years.
Yeah, and I think, as you just said, I mean, really what they were doing in 1913 was really bailing out the bankers at that time, weren't they? And that's the beginning of the big bailouts. And then you just mentioned 1971. Well, August, I know I'll never forget this, August 1971. And that was about the time you were headed to Vietnam to fight for your country. And obviously, this 1971, like pulling Nixon, taking the dollar off the gold standard, was really the move to protect dollar hegemony, was it not? And I think this is where really I start to come into the picture as well in my mind, because 2 years later, it's no coincidence, Robert, is it, that 2 years later, the Comex was developed, the paper market. And because regardless of taking gold off the dollar peg, nothing to stop really you still coming in and saying, okay, then we'll still, thank you, we'll exchange our dollars for what we know is a good price for gold. Hey, deja vu, where are we now? 50 years later, we're in the same position now with a failing Fed, and everyone that comes to us, whether they're stackers or billionaires, they're just saying, well, where do I put my money? There's only one place to put my money. So I think, do you think the jig is up for this whole paper market? Because the paper physical markets, from a wholesale market perspective, we know they do not jive. Do you think that the jig is up for the Comex?
Well, the gold bugs like you and I, it's been out for a long time. And the question is, when does the market or the mass market catch up? So the reason this Economist article, which is this month's, is so important, in 1 month, in 1 year, they print 16% of the GDP of the world. And how much? The only question is, Andrew, how much longer can they keep that up? And that's not the only part about it. What happened in 71, as you say, goes to the Comex, but what happened after that, we now have a derivatives market that is in the quadrillions. Yeah. So debt is measured in trillions, and the derivatives market is measured in quadrillions. So what people don't know, what a derivative is fake assets. Everything's fake now. So, it's like I give you an IOU and you give somebody else an IOU, and we just pass these IOUs around, and this market has grown so big, it's now in the quadrillions. So when people say, well, the debt's measured in trillions, I said, it's really in quadrillions. And that's why I'm a gold and silver bug. I've been for all these years, and so the guys like us, we've been waiting just for the air to come out of the balloon. And when that happens, then, as Jim Rickards says, gold goes to 15,000. And that's the difference.
I see a split here because the Fed's lost control. You've got the Fed on one continent, you've got Europe on the other, the Bank of International Settlements. Europe is on the same continent as Russia and China and India. Do you think a divide, there is a split coming where one wants a higher price and perhaps the Fed doesn't?
Anything's possible. You're far more complex than me. Look, I just know this. Exactly as I said, in 71, I was on my way over to Vietnam as a Marine helicopter pilot. And that's when I found out that Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. I didn't know what that meant. So I was flying off a carrier as a helicopter gunship pilot, and I decided to go look for gold. Because Americans, it was illegal for Americans to own gold. Most people don't know that. So they took it from you if you owned gold. That was in 1933 by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So I didn't know what gold was, so my co-pilot and I we had to fly behind enemy lines to find a gold mine. So we walk up to this gold mine in the North Vietnamese army had already rolled south, so we snuck in behind of them. I walk up to this window to buy gold from a little tiny Vietnamese woman, and she had red teeth, could eat betel nuts. And gold at that time was floating from 35 US to 50. So I thought because I was behind enemy lines, I could buy gold for a discount. Mistake. And she just laughed at us. She says, spot. She says, spot. I said, what does spot mean? And basically that's the price of gold all over the world at that moment in time. And I went, holy mackerel. And that's when it kind of clicked on me that gold is God's money. Gold is an element placed here on earth, the same as silver is. I studied that in chemistry. I started thinking about this and said, why was I taking paper? This little woman really clarified it for me. So the thing I say to people was at that moment, it was $50 an ounce from 35, and she would not budge. So finally, and then the NVA almost shot us, so we had to get out of there. So we had to, I waited to get to Hong Kong, and I bought my first ounce of gold. It was a Krugerrand from South Africa. So it cost me about $50. So when I talk to people about gold, I say it's not how much or what's going to happen in the future. All I care about today is how many ounces do you have? How many ounces of gold and how many ounces of silver, and what was the price you bought it at? That's all I care about, because in a few years, you're going to wish you had bought more. Do you know what I mean? To sit here and talk about the flies on the future and all this other stuff, to me, it's ridiculous. And I've started a gold mine in China, in Dalian, China. Of course, when I struck gold, the Chinese took it from me, which I don't trust the Chinese anymore. And I've built a silver mine in South America. So I am fairly familiar with gold and silver and the mining side. And I know it's being depleted. So when you look at this magazine, again, this is this month's issue of The Economist, very credible magazine. And last year they printed 16% of the GDP. The question I ask all of you right now is how many ounces of gold and how many ounces of silver do you have? I don't care about anything else. Just look at what they're doing today. Don't worry about tomorrow. Today they're printing so much money because this mountain of debt is so high. If they stop printing money, it crashes. And when it crashes, because they find out the dollar, which is a reserve currency of the world, is worthless, you're going to wish you had more ounces of gold and silver. And personally, I'm very bullish on silver, just because it's still 50% from its all-time high. It was $50 when I bought it. Now it's $24. So it's how many ounces do you have today? That's all I count.
Yeah, and I think that brings us into what we try to bring to our members of our subscribers to the Live from the Vault is we try and give the wholesale side of the market. We experience wholesale supply demand issues that are completely alien to what's going on in the paper markets, and I think so. You just mentioned something to me about when you were in Vietnam. I mean, you're talking about behind enemy lines all those years ago. Spot. I mean, talk about fungibility. I mean, 5,000 years or more of history. That is the only money that really has any value. And I think, talk about silver. And I raised this. We went to our Liechtenstein vaults recently, and we wanted to show, look, here's all this silver coming in to back up your currency. And I showed this $1 silver coin here. And it's 1902. That's it, 1902. And the thing is about this one silver coin is that it'll now buy you 30 times what it did in 1902. And I think that's what I always carry this in my pocket, because whenever I meet, they say, oh, gold, silver, well, yeah, but we don't know what that is. Yeah, this is what this is. It is real hedge. It's wealth preservation, number one. Forget making money. Wealth preservation is the number one thing that we try and teach people to, before you try and make money, keep what you've got. And as you just rightly said, how many ounces do you have? Physical do you have?
Well, let me put it this way. I paid $50 for that Krugerrand in Hong Kong. If I said I'd sell you that Krugerrand for $50, would you buy it?
Oh my goodness me. Well, do you know there are people out there who would probably say no? It's the strangest thing. It's amazing.
Well, this is the real thing. This is a Zimbabwe dollar. We've all seen these pieces of toilet paper. What is this? 10 billion. That's what this magazine is saying.
Yeah.
Economists. This is what they're doing. So I said, like people discuss the BIS, Bank of International Settlements, this, and this. I have traveled the world digging for gold and silver. I was in the Andes up at 14,000 feet. And like you said, it was 5,000. I don't know how many years the Incas were there. But I still remember standing in the Andes and seeing these lines going across the mountaintop. And I asked my geologist with me, I said, what is that? He says, 1,000 years ago, the Inca were tracking gold up a mountain. And I said, 1,000 years ago, the Inca, before the Spaniards, were digging for gold. And then I've been in Mongolia, same thing, a place called the Checkerboard, same thing. For thousands of years, humans have been digging for this gold. And this is before the internet and before telephone and before this. The Inca were digging for gold. The Chinese were digging for gold. The South Americans were digging for, you know what I mean? This is before the telephone and internet. So there's something, I hate to say it, spiritual about gold and silver. Humans know what real money is. And that's why I'll say it again. In 1933, when Franklin Delano Roosevelt, our president, made it illegal for Americans to own gold, the more I studied it, like you, I began to realize there's some kind of spiritual or special property to the power of gold and silver, which are real money. Yet most people, Andy, would rather have this. I said, hey, I'm going to give you $10 billion. And they get all excited. This is not even good toilet paper. But that's what the value systems are so off. So I'll say it again. I would stop discussing. If you don't have much money, run down and buy one silver something. Just buy something, real silver, not the ETF, not the derivative. Because that's all fake.
I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that the investment into gold or silver should be through an ETF. And of course, a lot of hedge funds, a lot of fund managers have no ability. It's not in their mandate to buy physical. So they are part of the problem, because the minute you start buying paper, gold and silver, what you're doing is you're empowering these same crooks to manage the price, because they will use that dilution in a concentrated form. And this is when I spent all these years ago, in 2010 onwards, working with the CFTC and the DOJ, and talking about giving them evidence of market manipulation, giving them absolute clear evidence, sitting in front of the DOJ with 88 examples on a screen of board level intervening. And we're talking about JP Morgan, we're talking about all the major banks here. And basically what they were saying was, really, this is enough to take down the too big to fail banks. This is enough to instigate class action suits in the billions and trillions against these banks. And what do they say? Yeah, Andy, what about the economic consequences of this? So, yes, this paper game is the problem. People are the people that buy this paper. You borrow these chips from the casino, and you then use margin and borrow it from them and wonder why you suddenly got rinsed. You're just giving power. And this is one of the things we try and tell people. Don't give the power back to these crooks, because as you've just said, physical gold, physical silver, and whether it's in your hands, whether it's on the blockchain and auditable in an immutable way, then you cannot possibly, you're just part of the problem rather than the solution.
And what I say with people, you haven't started, start with silver. It's about 25 bucks. Get 10 of them, 250, live dangerously. And what else I say to people, gold is for saving. Silver is for spending. So in case what hits the fan, which it will soon, when the whole thing comes down like a house of cards, and as Jim Rickard says, you won't be able to buy gold at any price at that point because the panic will be on. There's not enough gold there's shortages of gold right now. Premiums are high. But when it collapses, which is coming, we don't know when, but it's coming, you won't be able to buy the physical stuff because all the people that sold the derivatives, like the ETFs, will be buying it. And the guys you bought the ETF from are your biggest competitors. If you understand that's how screwed up the whole market is, you stay away from paper and you can buy as much hard physical gold and silver today. And not numismatic, I don't mean don't go into collectibles, just buy 1 ounce of gold, 1 ounce of silver. And I save gold, and if I have to run, I'll spend the silver.
Well, it's interesting. You've traveled so widely around the world, and I think, unfortunately, a lot of the US-centric people that we deal with, and unlike yourself, who haven't traveled a lot, really don't value. The reason they wouldn't buy that Krugerrand from you, for example, is because they just don't know. And I think if you've gone to India, and you will see the Indian farmer, rural farmer on a dusty road on his bicycle, owns kilos of the stuff, kilos from dowries, etc. When gold is revalued, you have to give your head a shake if you haven't got any gold, because what's going to happen? These are going to be extremely wealthy people, and the average American owns what, an ounce? Maybe, I don't know, but it's not much. It's maybe a bit of jewelry.
America spends more money on education than any other country in the world. But the reason I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad is my poor dad was head of education. And as you know, school teachers know nothing about money. Fundamentally, most school teachers are like Marx. Marx, who lived in London, he died in London.
Yeah.
He was a very intelligent man, but he didn't know how to make money. And that's what most school teachers are. They're highly educated people, but they know nothing about money. Then they teach our kids. And they teach our kids to work for this, toilet paper. And we wonder why we have problems. I don't know why anybody would save dollars or pounds or anything like that, because this whole paper money system is about to collapse. Now, I don't know when. It could be 5 years, 10 years. But that's why I keep saying to people, how many ounces do you have, and at what price did you buy it? How many ounces, and at what was your strike price? When did you enter? It's not when you sell, it's when you buy. So today, when I look at silver at 25 bucks, and when I started buying silver, it was 50 bucks. So when it went down to under 3, I bought more. So I got tons of silver because I'm never going to spend it. And I hope if I have to spend it, we're in serious trouble. Because the dollar is totally collapsed. But at least silver will always be accepted, and gold.
That's so true, and I think it's silver. I'm so pleased you're talking about silver, because it's often underrated, and obviously probably the cheapest from a commodity market perspective. It's probably the cheapest commodity on the planet Earth. But I think when we deal with, as I say, a range of people, and in our Liechtenstein vaults, which is 1 degree separated from a bail-in, which is one of the reasons why many billionaires come to rather choose that jurisdiction. But I go into the vault with one of my clients, and I say to him, why have you bought? And I'm talking about pallets and pallets and pallets of 1 ounce silver blank coins, 1 ounce silver coins. And I said, well, obviously, why don't we just give you 1,000 ounce bars? He said, Andy, you don't understand. When silver is worth 50, 100, 200 bucks, I can take this coin and I can use it and I can exchange it for things. I don't want to have 1,000 ounce bar. And yes, I'll pay the extra right now because I see silver in the $100, $200 range already. So it's interesting, and I think the other thing is that what is your thoughts? The Fed, this kind of raises the subject of bail-ins, and immediately that bail-ins pops up in my head when I see the Fed transitioning into trying to transit into a new monetary system, which is basically central bank digital currency, so they can impose negative interest rates on us. That's a bail-in, right? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, imagine you bring that up because this is another great article again by The Economist. I love this magazine. But anyway, this is all their article on GovCoins. It's worth reading because if and when we go to the Fed coin or the pound coin, this is the article. It's GovCoins by The Economist. We become communist. You see, the central bank, the moment they print this Gov coin, it'll wipe out not wipe them out, but it'll take away the business of the commercial banks like J.P. Morgan, Wells Fargo, and those guys. So it's really a crucial time in our history to be paying attention to what we spend as money. And gold and silver are God's money. It was put here on earth by God. They're elements. I think atomic number 47 or something like that. I flunked chemistry, but I just know it's God's money. And I've been all over the world looking for God's money. And humans have been looking for God's money before there was a telephone. So there's something relationship-wise between human beings and gold and silver. I don't know what it is. But like I said, when I was standing in the Andes looking at little holes going up this cliff, and what they were the Incas, or whatever they were called, the indigenous people, they were drilling for it. And then I was in Mongolia, again, looking at the checkerboard, same thing. These guys had drilled holes all over the place before anybody told them to do it. And of course, then the Spaniards came over and killed everybody for the gold that they took. And as Americans, we're over there trying to steal it from the Mongolians. The trouble was the Australians had already beat us to it. And so I've been in this business for 50 years, and it's God's money. Bitcoin and crypto are people's money. And if you read this article here about GovCoins, I think you'll get a little bit more bullish too on even Bitcoin. This is GovCoins. Because I think the secret to the next 50 years is you don't want any money that's this.
Yeah.
You want nothing attached in America to the Treasury or the Fed. And that's why I tell the story of the little Vietnamese woman when I fly behind enemy lines and I walk up to her little window to buy gold. And I tried to get a discount off of 50 because she was behind enemy lines. And she knew the price of gold that day. She knew. Yeah. And she was laughing at us, right? We're two college graduate pilots, Marines. And she's laughing at us. Are you kidding me? You want a discount? That was my wake-up call. You know what I mean? So I know what money is. It's just, I know for the gold bucks, I've been waiting for it to go to 2,500 for a long time, but not that long ago, it was at 13. It got stuck at 13 for a long time, then hit 12, 20, retraced back. So if it retraces anymore, I'd buy more, but silver is such a bargain, 24 bucks today. That's cheaper than that Krugerrand I bought 50 years ago.
And Robert, this is the mind-blowing part about it, because we're in the wholesale market right now. So we see these same banks who are using position concentration of paper silver to control the price. They're out there. Standard Chartered, for example, coming into our vault, our supply, all the suppliers from Russia, Kazakhstan, you name it, wherever we are trying to buy silver, they are there. And they're offering massive premiums. They're buying. In fact, and I made an announcement about this last time on my last episode. We are now sold wholesale silver, if you want size, September 22. Now, what the hell's going on? What the hell is the price today doing when we know these guys have bought all the forward production? Why are they buying forward production? Because they know what you and I know, but the average person doesn't know. There is no silver out there. It's already reached the point where, and I think they make sure they supply wholesale bars to the Samsungs, the Nokias, all the industrial users, because if they had to shut an assembly line down, you can make how quickly it wouldn't be just in time anymore. They'd go out and buy 50, 100, 200 tons. There would be no silver. The price of silver would spike through the roof. So the guys who are betting against the price of silver, make sure these guys get their wholesale bars. And the illusion is that there's plenty of silver. There's no silver. Guarantee there's no silver.
Right. And the most important thing for people who are listening, if you're watching the silver market, you're watching the wrong market. The reason I bring this magazine in here is because what this article says here, this is who I'm watching. You watch who's spending the money. It's the government. And I'll say it again. Governments have spent $17 trillion on the pandemic alone, 16% of the world GDP. That's who I'm watching. I'm just watching as a wholly natural. Do you know what I mean? What are you watching? I'm watching the government. I don't trust them. I never have. So I mean, they're so incompetent. I just can't believe it. I mean, if you listen to Jim Records and I are good friends, and he is an insider into this whole system. And he talks about how incompetent the Fed is and the Bank of England. They're incompetent people. They're like marks, highly educated people who don't know how to make money. They're not capitalists, they're socialists. And if you understand that, you'll buy more gold and silver today, not next year. Do you know what I mean? You just want as many as you can get now. How many ounces? Not what's the price. You watch the ounces. So I'd set a goal. This year I'm going to have 5 gold coins.
I'm sure you know that we've digitized physical gold and silver and put it on the blockchain, and because really what we're trying to do here is bring money back to the people, and as long as you know that it's allocated in your name and you put it on the blockchain, then you can see every single transaction is yours, or you can take delivery of it. But I think it's because gold's been money for over 5,000 years. And so really what we're trying to do is make sure that along with the Bitcoins of this world, that there are some asset-based blockchain assets, digital assets, which can actually be weighed up against any other asset, whether it's real estate, whether it's stocks, bonds, whatever. By sharing in the fee pool, we can create a yield, and that's suddenly bringing us institutional interest. What we're trying to do is get the price, get more interest into gold and silver, bring it into the asset managers' hands, let them see that there is something here other than a barbarous relic, which they're purely educated to do. And right now we see the stock market, these guys chasing the bubble, and no one gets fired if it all goes wrong. The one guy that buys gold, he gets fired if it doesn't go up, and the stock market does. It's a crazy situation.
Well, it's a derivative. Stock is a derivative. I'll give a simple definition of a derivative. If I have an orange and I cut the orange in half and I squeeze it, the orange juice is a derivative of the orange. So a stock is a derivative of a company. Gold and silver are not derivatives of but God. If you understand that, that's why I call it God's money, and I call blockchain people's money, because it's outside the Fed and outside the Treasury. It's outside the Bank of England. It's outside the German Bundesbank. And in a few years, you're going to find out these banks are in serious trouble because of debt, because all the Fed and the Bank of England has to do is print more money. And as long as people will accept this toilet paper like this, people are happy. But the moment one day somebody says, oh my God, this, I'm $10 billion, but it's not worth it. This couldn't buy me, I was in Zimbabwe, this wouldn't buy me an egg.
Goodness me.
10 billion Zim dollars.
So
And
when's
then,
this, when did you pick up this? When were you in Zimbabwe? Just out of interest.
2004.
Wow, and that is a coin. That is the note that literally was circulating at that time. Yes.
Correct. But I go to Africa. I love Africa. It's one of the greatest. I just love it. What a great continent, rich continent. But anyway, what's screwing us all up are academics. The academic elite, the liberal left and all this. I don't know where their heads are at, but they're not up in air, up their butts. And so the Fed fits into that category. The Bank of England fits in that category. They're doing all these projections and all this, but they're not attached to reality. And that's why that little Vietnamese woman in 1972, she woke me up. She goes, what am I doing? I tried to get a discount on gold from $50. And I ask all your listeners right now, if I said I'll sell you my Krugerrand for $50, would you say I'll think about it?
Not one of our subscribers would.
Yeah, and they think about it. They want to discuss the Fed, the Bank of International, BIS, and I don't know. I just want how many ounces you got. What's your entry price? Like Bitcoin, my entry price is $6,000, so I was a little late, but I caught the move up, and it's about 55,000 now. So I'm still in the money. I don't know anything but that. I don't like to discuss much. Once I see that movement going, and like I'm talking about the movement, and as a miner, I know that the gold reserves are being depleted. And a lot of the gold now found is in countries that hate us. So, I mean, I don't know what people are waiting for. What are you discussing? Let me show this again to you. 17 trillion dollars.
Robert, it rolls off the tongue. But what is a trillion? I mean, I can't even conceive the size of a trillion. My brain won't even conceive it.
Now, a billion is 9 zeros, so a trillion must be 12 zeros, and a quadrillion. You see, it's not the trillion, it's the derivative market, which is taking the trillions and taking that one more derivative. It's in the quadrillions, Andy. It's called the shadow banking system. The shadow banking system is so huge that if they'll be like, I owe you money, so okay, Andy, I can't pay you, so you can't pay somebody else, and you can't pay somebody else. When that whole shadow banking system collapses, that's exactly what record says. You won't be able to buy it at any price. They won't have it. And people won't take paper then.
Well, this leads to your one thing which keeps ringing true, and if we had to end on anything, Robert, it's how many ounces of gold, how many ounces of silver do you have? And I think, thank you for that, because I think that cuts through all the bullshit, cuts through absolutely everything, all the talk about anything. How many do you have? Robert, that is such a strong message, because, as you say, it'll be unavailable at some point. And just because the paper market tells you today there's loads of it, which there isn't, then obviously, and even gold, as I say, even gold, we talked about silver being sold out till wholesale silver in any size out till September of next year. Already, kilobar orders are moved in gold out till next year already. So, this is ludicrous, but what the hell's going on with the price today? Nothing but paper. So I'm just so thank you for those sage words, because people should listen.
So let me say, it's just ancient. It's just ancient. Like standing in the Andes, seeing these little holes drilled up the mountain. I said, why were the Inca digging for gold? Nobody told them to do it. Yeah. There was internet, there was no phone. And why were the Mongolians digging for gold? There's something about gold and silver that's attractive to human beings. And I don't have the answer to it. But when I saw that little Vietnamese woman and I tried to get a discount from 50, and she laughed her ass off at me with her little red teeth, she was my best teacher ever.
That sounds brilliant. Well, thank you so much for spending a little time with us here, because it sort of stretches our our view of everything, and really you've done a lot for educating people. And I think, to me, it's all about how do we take personal responsibility.
Yes.
You need the tools, and unless you have the tools, then you can't really do it very well. And I think, thank you for that, because I think that's something. I mean, my kids brought me that book long before I ever came across it. And as Shane had just said before we started, he's been to every single event that you've ever had. Why? Because it made sense to do so. We have to learn these tools. But I thank you so much for all you do for all of us.
Thank you. And Andy, may I give a commercial message here? This is my latest book. It's the Capitalist Manifesto. And it comes out later this month in December 2021. But I was a student of Marx. Like I said, he died in London. And Marx reminded me of my poor dad, highly educated, poor man. And Marx hated the rich. He never understood why the rich were rich. So that's why I have my rich dad. So poor dad is like Marx, very highly educated guy who was broke all the time. And, I'd rather be like my rich dad and with my best friend's father. And he taught me to be a capitalist. Now, the benefit I had, I went to military school in New York, and we had to study Marx, Lenin, Stalin, Mao, and Hitler. And all of these guys, gold was an important part of their foundation. If you understand that, it's not how much is the price of gold, but how many ounces do you have. And silver today is $25 US. Jesus Christ. I was paying $48 when I started. It's the biggest bargain I've ever seen. In fact, I've just talked myself into running to buy some more silver.
Yeah, absolutely, especially as these fools right now, you can buy it for $22.67. I mean, unbelievable, beyond credit. It's incredible that people don't understand, that believe they look at a 10-minute chart and they say, oh my God, it's going down. Yeah,
They'd rather have toilet paper. They'd rather have toilet paper. That's how screwed up people are. So one more time, unplug my book. It's called Capitalist Manifesto. Comes out this month sometime. But it's really the most exciting time because it's a big change in history.
Where can people get that book?
It's online,
It's online.
I'm afraid Amazon's going to take this one down too.
Oh yeah, it probably will. It probably will. But I mean, aren't you also running some podcasts on the Capitalist Manifesto?
Yeah. I just have stories of people who actually ran from communism. You see, the average, like in London and America and all this, they don't know what communism is. So my poor dad didn't know he was a communist because they don't study it at school. Now, the difference was I went to school, to military school. I had to study Communist Manifesto. And what I see today is communism everywhere. But they don't know it. That's the problem. So I wrote Capitalist Manifesto. It's a big book. What is to explain capitalism versus communism taught in our schools. The positioning statement of this book here, Capitalist Manifesto, is how to counter communism taught in our schools by teaching capitalism in our homes. We have to fight back because communism is taking over. Marx is winning right now.
As I say, from our perspective, obviously, gold, silver solution. But thank you for drawing attention to this because, again, it's casting that net out a little wider and touching more people and getting more people to understand there is a solution. You just need to understand what the problem is.
Yeah. So I'll finish with this, Andy. Toilet paper is more valuable than this.
Lovely way to end. Thank you, Robert. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you.
And there you have it, Robert Kiyosaki and Andrew Maguire. Buy physical, understand and help people understand the difference between what Andy affectionately calls the casino paper, gold, and silver markets and the actual physical gold and silver markets. They're not the same. Don't be fooled. And thank you so much, Robert Kiyosaki and Andrew Maguire, for that fantastic interview. I knew this was going to be a good one. And there you have it. That's all we have for you today on another fascinating episode of Live from the Vault. Please help us spread the word by liking, sharing, subscribing, hit that bell notification if you'd like to be notified as each episode goes live. With that, we'll see you next time on Live from the Vault. See you then.